Hello everyone, I'm back with another project. This time we are going to upgrade the gear stop lever or detent arm on my 2009 Ducati 848. I will be upgrading with a Factory Pro shift kit. In order to do this project we have to remove the clutch, and we'll do that in a minute. First, let's take a look at the exploded view of the work area. You can see the components here that we will remove. The bolt and the washer, as seen here, are going to be stock, and the arm and the spring will be from Factory Pro. We do need a couple of special tools. I have my 25-inch breaker bar here, along with a clutch basket holding tool that will make this job much easier. Everything else is pretty straightforward. We need to drain the oil. And you can see here that I have only removed the right side mid and lower fairings. I also have some safety wire to remove, and you need to disconnect the oil pressure switch. One more piece of safety wire. Once I get all this done, I like to draw out on a piece of cardboard box the locations of all of the bolts that will be removed during this process. This allows me to do a couple of things. First of all, it prevents me from kicking bolts around on my garage floor and losing them. And secondly, and probably more importantly, it allows me to keep track of where all of the long bolts versus the medium size and smaller size bolts go when I put everything back together. You will see a variety of sizes of bolts here on this side. Take a rubber mallet and break loose the cover. I'm applying pressure as well in the oil filler hole with my finger, and it will take a little bit of work to get this broken loose. Eventually it will break loose. Take note of the locating bush to the left of the clutch. There it is. You can see my EVR slipper clutch here. This was installed about 6,000 miles ago, around 15,000 total on the bike, by a technician at my dealership. And now you can see that I'm breaking loose the clutch bolts here. And I'm doing that in a crisscross fashion as well to ensure that I release the pressure in an even manner so nothing gets binded up inside there. I'll tighten up the bolts in the same manner. Now we can go ahead and remove the bolts, springs, and collars, and the pressure plate, which should have the bearing and clutch lifter intact. Keep all this stuff in a safe, clean place and make sure you don't lose anything. We can now remove the clutch plates, and I like to keep them in the same order as they were installed. And these are the factory plates. They have more than 21,000 miles on them, and they're still within spec. And you can see here that before I broke this nut loose, I wanted to check, just out of curiosity, to see if it was still within spec at 120 Newton meters, and it was. So now we can go ahead and break loose the clutch nut. And with these two tools it's really easy. This 25-inch breaker bar makes it really easy to break loose. You will notice that this nut feels really tight because it's a precision nut, but you will eventually get it off. And when you get it off, you can then remove the clutch drum, which also has a Bellevue washer inside. Make sure you don't lose that. And this is kind of interesting here. On mine, I found a small piece of a bearing cage, and I believe that's from the alternator side cover where I had a bearing malfunction last year. You need to remove this washer and the clutch basket. That's kind of hard to get off, but you can play with it and get it eventually. I'm going to leave this spacer here, and This is the detent arm that we're going to be working on. We're going to replace that, but first I need to get down to the local hardware store to pick up a size 30 Torx bit, which I did not have in my toolbox. I recommend getting a good quality tool here because the head is kind of shallow and you don't want to strip out that special bolt. When you pull off these components, you will see that they are in the same order as the diagram: the bolt, the arm, the washer, and the spring. And obviously they go back on in the same order. And I found that if you keep the spring loose at first and tighten up the bolt as much as you can before you load up the spring on the rib, that really does help get this on. Don't forget to use some medium strength thread locker and torque this down to 18 Newton meters and we're done. Here's a final picture, and now we can start putting everything back together. But first, we need to make sure that we have the mating surfaces clean on this side of the crankcase and on the cover. And you can see that I like to remove the big pieces by hand, and then I use a soft wire brush along with a clean rag to make sure that the mating surfaces are totally clean and ready for the liquid gasket. So make sure the spacer's there, put the basket on and the washer, and then you can slip on the clutch drum. This is my EVR, so it's a little bit different from the stock version. Then there's two washers that go on. The first one is a flat washer. That's going on now. And the next one is a Bellevue washer. Put the wide end out towards the cover. Another Bellevue washer here. It goes on in the opposite direction. I put a little bit of grease on the bottom of the nut and some thread locker on the threads before I break out my 27mm socket to start tightening this up. And as I mentioned before, this gets torqued down to 120 Newton meters. Now we can go ahead and put the clutch plates back in, and I'll put up on the screen here in a second the order in which they go. And I do want to point out that on my EVR slipper, aftermarket slipper clutch, it uses the same clutch pack in the same order, but unlike the stock clutch pack where the very last plate goes in a little bit offset from the other plates, this one goes on exactly the same. And you'll see here in a minute that I had to go back and redo this because I offset that last plate. You can see it here, but that was an easy fix. So again, on these boats, make sure you're crisscrossing. These get torqued down on the EVR slipper to 8 Newton meters. If you're using the stock clutch, the boats get torqued down to 6 Newton meters. Everything's clean, and we are going to apply some Yamabond liquid gasket, and we're ready to put this back on. You can see here that I use a couple wooden dowels to help facilitate the installation. This is probably more useful when installing the alternator side cover. And that's the thud that we're listening for. Once you hear that, you can go ahead and start installing the bolts. And I like to hand tighten these down first, then crisscross using the torque wrench to 10 Newton meters. Then I take one final run all the way around one last time to double check the spec of 10 Newton meters, and that's what I'm doing here. And as soon as that's finished, you can go ahead and reconnect the oil pressure switch. Don't forget to put the oil back in, and you're done. Finally, this is a great upgrade. I've had this on the street and the track, and the shifting feels much more precise. It's smoother and more solid, and no false neutrals. I highly recommend this upgrade. Good luck.